So now it's actually the closing remarks for the conference, which will be provided by Professor Marcus Anthony Hunter, who is the Scott Wow Endowed Chair in the Division of Social Sciences, full professor in sociology and chair of the Department of African American Studies at UCLA. He's the author of Black City Makers, How the Philadelphia Negro Changed Urban America, and co-author with Sandria Robertson of the book Chocolate City, The Black Map of American Life. Professor Hunter will be offering some closing remarks on the broader themes of the conferences.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, and I always come with my speakers, so there will be music. So first, I just want to say a shout out to SA for putting together something like this. From the internets that I've been following and from folks who I've had a chance to talk to, this is a very needed experience, and I can't imagine undertaking something like this in my first quarter as an assistant professor. So shout out to SA for that. What I want to do is start by referencing how Black music travels, and I think that it is a good starting point. And I imagine a lot of times when folks start talking about things, we don't always hear music, and I grew up with music all the time, and so I like to start with that. The original year was 1967. The original artist was Dandy Livingstone. The song was originally called Rudy, A Message for You. It's remade 50 years ago by the Specials. The year is 1979. The song is called A Message to You, Rudy, and I will come back to you. So if you allow me, I want to bring the Specials together with the notorious Biggie Smalls. I wrote this intentionally. It was all a dream, in part because I think that we are literally living in a dream. And I think a lot of times when we start to think about what's wrong with our reality, we forget that it was all actually a dream. How many times do you have an actual dream of something, tell somebody, and then allow them to criticize it? It's like, but I dreamt that. It wasn't real. And so before we get focused on the material reality, I think it's important that we understand that all of this started as a lot of people's dream. And so of course there are imperfections, but I also think that there are deep continuities. The most major one, which I like to focus on, is blackness. Blackness here, blackness there, blackness everywhere. And I want to frame us today in Black Studies as what we hear the gender neutral Rudy. Rudy works as a boy's name, as a girl's name, as a non-girl, as a non-boy's name. And I think it's intentionally speaking to us, because race has been an effective tool with which the state has been determined to show where it can be its best and where it can be its worst. It is through racism that the state can simultaneously deny and weaponize its mirroring systems of justice, injustice, and inequality and equality. As a range of scholars have demonstrated over the course of this conference, the reach of the global effects of race and racism extend beyond the confines of the United States, beyond the confines of Europe, and into Africa. Colonization has had a nearly totalizing effect on the globe, carrying with it a range of racial logics to effectively disaggregate, quote, us from, quote, them, be they indigenous, think of Australia here, Africa, the Caribbean, North or South America, and or of color, non-white, Black, Arab, Latinx, etc. Here we can think of scholars like Kwame Appiah, Edward Said, which Gloria mentioned earlier, and so on. As critical geographers, for example, Catherine McKittrick and Clyde Woods demonstrate, our maps are the products of the purposeful manifest destiny and capitalist conquest of European nations. As a result, in my view, blackness has traveled. Blackness arrived unanticipated in some places, nestled alongside and surrounding white supremacy in other places. And even in other places, still blackness burst into a pigmentocracy. Shout out to Eddie Tejas. A spectrum of browns, blacks, oranges, neutrals, and reds. See Omi Wynant, my colleague Vilma Ortiz here, and shout out to Gene Beeman in the back. Blackness has stayed, even as many would proclaim its death and flight from the geographies and places it helped sustain and produce purposefully, inadvertently, and proactively. Indeed, nation states dispensing with anti-blackness have solidified and rendered visible other sustaining locations of disempowerment amidst supposed states of freedom. So I like to provide a couple of hashtags along what I'm going to say, so you'll get my vibe as I go along. But the first ones I want to give you is hashtag Steve Biko is right. And hashtag Walter Rodney is right. Blackness is everywhere as a consequence of white supremacy. Quest for manifest destiny, colonization, European and Arab slave trades, and racial capitalism matter. With each addition to the empire, a new place and group have to be folded in so as to count in favor for, but never against the status quo. There is no place in the world more perhaps primed to demonstrate the importance and consequences of this insight other than South Africa, which is not quite Europe, not quite the United States. Next, hashtag Catherine McKittrick is right. Hashtag Derek Bell is right. Hashtag Clyde Woods is right. And hashtag Frantz Fanon is right. Blackness is everywhere as a consequence of anti-blackness, the product of a steady diet of messages of racial stereotypes, danger, and violence. So you might not think you're black, but you are. Hashtag Audre Lorde is right. Hashtag Kimberly Crenshaw is right. Hashtag Patricia Hill Collins is right. Blackness is everywhere as a consequence of categories of power and the relations thereof. So this leads me to always thinking of one of my major heroes and now the ancestor, hashtag Stuart Hall is right. We are the gender neutral Rudy. The message is of love. The message is that black music, like the knowledge form it is, travels. It is time to think of our future, time to straighten white studies out. Insert here social science, physical science, and the humanities. Because the future is black, and it is filled with question marks that only black studies and black people can answer, here, there, and everywhere. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking your time with us at Black Studies at UCLA.